The lecture hall hummed with subdued chatter as the intergalactic students filed in, their diverse forms shimmering under the bluish glow of the Zelthran Academy's lights. Each seat adjusted to accommodate the strange anatomies. Some had tentacles, others wings, and a few, like the massive Zorix warriors, had armor like exoskeletons. At the center of the room stood Dr. Lara Quinn, adjusting her presentation materials with practiced ease. Lara glanced at the class roster displayed on her holoscreen. Her audience comprised some of the brightest young minds in the galaxy, yet their curiosity about Earth often ranged from mild interest to outright disdain. One name, however, stood out: Morvik, the pride of the Zorix, known for his towering stature, sharp intellect, and a penchant for proving his dominance. Today's lesson was going to be different. "Welcome, students," Lara began, her voice steady. "Today, we explore one of Earth's smallest predators, a creature no larger than a pebble, yet capable of striking fear into the hearts of giants." The students' holographic desks projected an image of a tiny brown spider spinning its web. A ripple of confusion spread through the room. "This," she said, holding up a transparent container with the live specimen inside, "is a common house spider. Harmless to humans in most cases, but its venom contains compounds that can paralyze creatures much larger than itself." The murmurs grew louder. Morvik leaned back, his sharp mandibles clicking in a gesture of dismissal. "This? A predator? Doctor, I thought we were here to study significant lifeforms." A few students laughed, but Lara met his gaze with a calm, unwavering stare. "Significance isn't always measured in size, Cadet Morvik. Sometimes it's measured in adaptability, resilience, and survival." She placed the container on a central podium. The spider scurried to a corner, its delicate legs moving like clockwork. The alien students leaned forward, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed discomfort. "As you can see, its appearance is deceptive," Lara continued, circling the podium. "This small creature has survived countless predators and harsh conditions. Its venom, while not lethal to humans, can cause excruciating pain or worse for species with less immunity." A hand, or rather, a glowing tendril, rose from the back. "Dr. Quinn," asked Kava, a translucent, jellyfish-like being, "are you suggesting this insignificant creature could harm someone like the Zorix?" Before Lara could respond, Morvik snorted. "Impossible. My kind has conquered planets and defeated apex predators across the galaxy. A creature from your primitive world couldn't." The spider moved. A sudden, erratic scuttle across the container caused several students to jolt. Even Morvik froze for a fraction of a second before he recovered, his mandibles twitching in irritation. "Didn't seem so impossible a moment ago," Lara quipped, her voice laced with amusement. "It's just unexpected," Morvik retorted, his tone defensive. "Your planet's creatures lack order. They are chaotic, unpredictable. That's not strength, it's madness. Call it what you will," Lara said, "but Earth's ecosystem thrives because of that chaos. Every creature, no matter how small, plays its role. This spider's venom evolved to protect it against predators far stronger than itself. In a way, it's a perfect lesson in balance." Morvik stood, his towering form casting a shadow across the room. "Balance? That's a convenient excuse for weakness. If this creature is so powerful, let it prove itself." Lara raised an eyebrow. "Are you suggesting a challenge, Cadet?" The room fell silent. All eyes were on Morvik now. His reputation as an undefeated warrior preceded him, and it was clear he was eager to maintain it, even in a classroom. "I am," he said firmly. "Place it in a controlled environment with me, and we'll see how dangerous it really is." Lara shook her head. "That's not how this works. The spider doesn't need to prove its worth to you, Morvik. Its existence is proof enough. Your reaction, however, speaks volumes." The subtle jab landed, and Morvik's mandibles flared slightly. He stepped closer to the container, his black, insectoid eyes narrowing as he studied the tiny creature. For all his bravado, there was an unmistakable tension in his stance. "I'm not afraid of it," he muttered. "Then why are you keeping your distance?" Lara asked with a sly smile. The class erupted in laughter, and even some of Morvik's fellow Zorics chuckled. Morvik's mandibles clicked angrily, and he turned to Lara. This is absurd. Why are we wasting time on such trivialities? Because, Lara said, her tone firm now, trivialities, as you call them, can have massive consequences. Underestimating something small is often the first mistake made by those who believe they are invincible. Morvik didn't respond immediately. His pride wouldn't allow him to back down, but the faint ripple of unease in his posture betrayed him. He stepped back to his seat, his eyes still fixed on the container. Lara let the moment hang in the air before turning back to the class. Earth's creatures have survived for millennia not because they are the strongest, but because they adapt. This spider's venom is a perfect example. It doesn't attack without reason. It simply ensures its survival. A lesson, perhaps, for all of us. She gestured toward the holographic desks, which now displayed a magnified view of the spider's anatomy. Now let's discuss the biochemistry of its venom and how it interacts with different species. Cadet Morvik, feel free to share your thoughts, if you're still interested in trivialities. The class chuckled again, but the tension had shifted. Morvik remained silent, his pride wounded but his curiosity undeniably piqued. As the lecture continued, Lara couldn't help but glance at him occasionally. His initial arrogance had cracked, revealing a glimmer of doubt. It wasn't fear of the spider, she realized, it was fear of what it represented. For someone like Morvik, whose entire identity was built on dominance, the idea that something so small could challenge him was a profound and unsettling truth. The session ended with students filing out, their conversations buzzing with newfound fascination, or, in some cases, lingering discomfort. Morvik lingered for a moment, his gaze still fixed on the spider. "Dr. Quinn," he said finally, his tone quieter now. "What happens if a Zorix were to encounter one of these on Earth?" Lara smiled faintly. "Depends on the Zorix. Would they crush it out of fear, or would they respect its place in the web of life?" Morvik didn't reply, but the question lingered in the air as he turned and left. Lara watched him go, a flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. The lesson had begun, not just for Morvik, but for them all. The Zelthran Academy's council chamber was a stark contrast to the buzzing lecture hall. Sleek and circular, the room was designed to host representatives from dozens of species, each seat accommodating their unique forms. At the center stood Dr. Lara Quinn, her shoulders squared as she faced the council. Around her, holographic projections of Earth's creatures floated, including the now infamous spider that had stirred such controversy in her lecture. The council members, a mix of towering figures, glowing entities, and amorphous beings, observed her with an unnerving stillness. Supreme Cadet Morvik stood to her right, his massive form radiating barely concealed impatience. He had wasted no time escalating his grievances, claiming the spider posed an unnecessary danger and had no place in the academy. "This is absurd," Lara began, breaking the silence. "We're debating the merits of studying a creature no larger than a coin, yet capable of teaching us invaluable lessons about resilience and adaptation." A council member with shimmering, serpentine features hissed softly. "Dr. Quinn, the concern is not the creature itself but the unnecessary risk it represents. We cannot allow a species that evokes such fear to disrupt our students' focus." "Fear?" Lara's tone sharpened. "The fear isn't in the spider, it's in the minds of those who refuse to understand it. Earth's ecosystem has been deemed chaotic, dangerous, even primitive, but that doesn't make it any less valuable. Dismissing it out of fear would be a mistake." Morvik's mandibles clicked audibly. "And what value does this creature offer, Doctor? Beyond your poetic defense of its existence, what practical purpose does it serve here?" Lara turned to face him, her voice steady but pointed. "Practicality isn't the only measure of worth, Cadet. This spider has survived against odds that would annihilate most species. Its venom is a marvel of evolution, capable of neutralizing threats far larger than itself. If we fail to study it, we're not just ignoring Earth, we're ignoring an opportunity to learn about survival itself." The room fell silent for a moment, tension crackling like static. Finally, another council member, a gelatinous being with pulsing orbs for eyes, spoke. Dr. Quinn, the cadet has suggested a challenge, a controlled simulation to demonstrate the creature's capabilities. Would you be willing to proceed? Lara hesitated, glancing at Morvick, who stood taller now, his arrogance returning. This was a power play, a chance for him to prove dominance, even over Earth's smallest creature. Still, she knew this could be her moment to change perceptions. I'll allow it, she said firmly. On one condition. The simulation will highlight the spider's behavior as it would occur naturally. No interference, no manipulation. Let the cadet face the truth without bias. Morvick's mandibles twitched in irritation, but he nodded. Agreed. The simulation chamber was a marvel of technology, capable of recreating any environment with stunning realism. Today, it had been programmed to mimic a dense, earth-like forest, complete with towering trees, rustling foliage, and the faint hum of unseen creatures. At the center of the simulated clearing sat a small glass enclosure containing the spider, now released onto a mock web strung between two low branches. Lara stood with a group of students and council members behind a transparent barrier, watching as Morvick entered the simulation. The Zorix warrior was clad in light armor, his steps deliberate as he approached the web. Remember, Lara said through the comms, the spider doesn't attack unless provoked. If you're careful, it won't even register you as a threat. Morvick snorted, his voice crackling over the speakers. I don't need your advice, Doctor. The spider moved. It was a subtle motion, a shift of its legs as it sensed the vibrations in its web. Morvick paused, his massive frame stiffening for a fraction of a second. The audience behind the barrier noticed, but no one spoke. Lara leaned closer to the comms. It's not going to leap at you, Morvick. It's assessing its environment. Much like you should be. He ignored her, stepping closer. The spider remained still, its body low against the web. Lara could see the tension in Morvick's posture, the way his mandibles twitched. He was trying to mask his unease, but the unpredictable nature of the spider clearly unnerved him. This is ridiculous, he muttered. The spider scuttled across the web with startling speed, its sudden motion amplified by the silence. Morvick flinched, a sharp movement that elicited a murmur from the audience. Lara couldn't help but smile. Afraid, cadet? She asked, her tone teasing. I'm not afraid. Morvick snapped. It's unpredictable. Exactly, Lara said. Earth's creatures don't follow the rigid patterns you're used to. They adapt, they react, and they survive. That's their strength. Morvick's mandibles clicked furiously, but he didn't retreat. Instead, he crouched lower, bringing himself closer to the web. The spider, sensing no immediate threat, remained still. You think this is a lesson in survival? Morvick growled. All I see is chaos. Chaos, Lara countered, is nature's way of finding balance. Suddenly, the spider moved again, this time dropping down from the web on a thin strand of silk. It hung there, swaying slightly, its tiny form almost insignificant against the backdrop of the towering forest. But the effect was immediate. Morvick stood abruptly, his composure cracking. I've seen enough, he declared, his voice tight. Lara pressed a button, ending the simulation. The spider was safely contained, and the forest dissolved into the sterile white walls of the chamber. Morvick stormed out without a word, his pride visibly bruised. The council members turned to Lara, their expressions ranging from thoughtful to impressed. One of them, the serpentine figure from earlier, nodded slowly. You've made your point, Dr. Quinn. Perhaps there is merit in studying Earth's creatures after all. Lara gave a small, satisfied smile. Thank you. And to those still unconvinced, I suggest spending more time with these so-called trivialities. They might surprise you. As the council dispersed, Lara caught sight of Morvick lingering near the exit. She approached him, her voice low so only he could hear. Cadet, she said, strength isn't about crushing what you don't understand. It's about learning from it. He didn't respond immediately, his mandibles twitching in thought. Finally, he met her gaze. This isn't over, Doctor. Lara chuckled softly. It never is, Morvik. That's the beauty of learning. She walked away, leaving him to his thoughts. The spider, now safely enclosed once more, was a small but powerful reminder of Earth's place in the galaxy, a place Lara was determined to defend. The Zelthran Academy descended into chaos mere hours after the simulation. An emergency alert blared through the halls, casting an eerie red glow over the usually serene corridors. Dr. Lara Quinn sprinted toward the biological containment lab, her mind racing. The message had been clear: a containment breach involving Earth specimens. Lara reached the lab, her chest tightening as she surveyed the damage. Broken glass littered the floor, holographic displays flickered erratically, and the automated security system had been overridden. Several specimens, including the spider, were missing. Nearby, a group of trembling students and staff huddled, whispering nervously. "What happened?" Lara demanded, her voice sharp. A technician stammered. "A malfunction in the containment seals. We think it might have been tampered with." "Tampered?" Lara's gaze snapped to the group. Morvik stood among them, his mandibles tight with tension. His usual arrogance was absent, replaced by something closer to frustration or fear. "This wasn't an accident," Morvik said, his tone grave. "Someone sabotaged the system, probably to make a point about Earth's creatures being too dangerous for the Academy." "Congratulations," Lara said dryly. "They've succeeded in creating a real problem." She strode toward the control panel, pulling up a map of the Academy. Several blinking dots marked the escaped specimens' locations. Most were contained in safe zones, but one dot pulsed ominously near the dormitories. "The spider." Lara sighed. "Of course it's the spider." Morvik stepped forward. "Let me handle it." Lara raised an eyebrow. "You? The last time you saw it, you barely held your composure. Now you want to track it down?" Morvik's mandibles twitched, but his tone remained steady. "I underestimated it before. That won't happen again." "Good to know," Lara said, her skepticism clear. "But you're not going alone. If that spider bites you, we'll need to act fast." Without waiting for a response, she grabbed a containment kit and motioned for him to follow. The dormitory wing was eerily quiet. Lights flickered sporadically, and the air felt heavy with tension. Lara scanned the area with a handheld tracker, the device emitting soft beeps as it homed in on the spider's location. Morvik followed closely, his usually imposing figure uncharacteristically subdued. "Why are you so determined to do this?" Lara asked, her eyes on the tracker. Morvik hesitated before answering. "Because I need to understand. Strength without understanding is meaningless." Lara glanced at him, surprised by the uncharacteristic humility. "Well, you're learning something at least." The tracker's beeps grew faster as they approached a common area. Lara held up a hand, signaling Morvik to stop. "It's close." They stepped cautiously into the room. The spider hung motionless on a delicate web stretched between two chairs. Its tiny form seemed almost insignificant, but the tension in the air was palpable. Morvik froze, his black, compound eyes locked on the creature. His mandibles clicked softly as he exhaled, steadying himself. "It's not going to attack you," Lara whispered. "Unless you give it a reason." He nodded, taking a careful step forward. The spider twitched, sensing the vibrations in the air. Morvik froze again, his body tense but controlled. "Keep going," Lara encouraged. Slowly. He moved closer, each step deliberate. The spider remained still, watching him with its multiple, glistening eyes. When he was within arm's reach, he extended a containment pod toward it. The spider shifted slightly, and Morvik flinched. Lara placed a hand on his shoulder, her voice calm. "Stay steady. It's testing you." Morvik swallowed hard and held his ground. The spider, seemingly satisfied, climbed into the containment pod. The tension broke like a snapped wire, and Morvik exhaled sharply, closing the pod with a hiss of relief. "You did it," Lara said, a note of approval in her voice. Morvik straightened, his usual confidence returning. It wasn't as terrifying as I expected. Lara smirked. That's because you've finally stopped trying to dominate it and started trying to understand it. With the spiders safely contained, they returned to the lab. The remaining specimens had already been secured, and the technicians were working to restore the containment systems. Lara handed the pod to a staff member, who carefully placed it back into its enclosure. Morvik lingered by the door, his mandibles twitching thoughtfully. Lara approached him, her arms crossed. Admit it, she said. You've learned something from a creature you once dismissed as insignificant. He met her gaze, his tone quieter than usual. I have. Earth's creatures, they're more than I gave them credit for. They survive through resilience, not brute force. There's strength in that. Lara smiled faintly. That's the point, Morvik. Survival isn't just about being the biggest or the strongest. It's about adapting, finding balance, and respecting the world around you. He nodded, his mandibles clicking softly in a gesture of acknowledgement. You've taught me that, Doctor. Perhaps there's more to Earth than I was willing to see. Perhaps, Lara said, her tone teasing, you're finally becoming a decent student. For the first time, Morvik chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that surprised even him. Don't push your luck, Doctor. As they parted ways, Lara couldn't help but feel a flicker of satisfaction. The spider had done more than survive. It had sparked a shift in perspective, not just for Morvik but for everyone who had witnessed the events of the past days. Back in her quarters, Lara reflected on the journey. Earth's creatures, often dismissed as chaotic and insignificant, had once again proven their worth. And while the galaxy might still see her planet as a dangerous anomaly, she knew the truth. Strength came in many forms, and sometimes, it was the smallest voices that spoke the loudest. The aftermath of the containment breach rippled through the Zelthran Academy. Conversations buzzed in hallways, lectures pivoted to discussions of Earth's ecosystem, and Morvik's quiet transformation became the subject of hushed speculation among the students. For Dr. Lara Quinn, however, the work was far from over. While the spider was safely contained and the Academy's systems restored, the Council had called an emergency meeting to evaluate whether Earth's creatures could remain part of the curriculum. Lara walked into the Council chamber, the familiar circular room now filled with tension. The Council members sat in their respective stations, their forms bathed in the soft glow of their species' unique bioluminescence. At the center stood Supreme Cadet Morvik, his imposing presence strangely subdued. He had insisted on accompanying her, a gesture that puzzled but intrigued Lara. Counselor Cesari, the Serpentine representative, opened the session. Dr. Quinn, while the containment breach was resolved, it has reignited concerns about Earth's creatures and their suitability for intergalactic education. Many feel the risks outweigh the benefits. Lara straightened, her voice calm but resolute. Earth's creatures are not the problem. Fear and misunderstanding are. The breach was the result of sabotage, not the creatures themselves. Cesari's eyes narrowed. Even so, the spider caused widespread panic among the students. Is it worth maintaining such specimens if they disrupt the Academy's harmony? Before Lara could respond, Morvik stepped forward. With respect, Counselor, the spider did not cause panic. We did. A ripple of surprise moved through the chamber. Morvik's voice was steady, his mandibles clicking softly as he continued. We feared it because we didn't understand it. I was among those who dismissed it as insignificant, even dangerous. But when I faced it, I learned otherwise. It is not a threat, it is a lesson. Counselor Vrex, a crystalline being who rarely spoke, chimed in, their voice resonating like chimes. A lesson in what, Cadet? Morvik glanced at Lara before answering. A lesson in humility. Strength isn't always about dominance or size. That spider thrives in a world far more chaotic than ours because it adapts. It doesn't attack without reason, it only defends itself. We could learn from that. Lara couldn't hide her smile. Exactly. Earth's ecosystem is a testament to balance and resilience. By studying it, we gain insights into survival, adaptation, and coexistence, qualities essential for any intergalactic community. The Council murmured among themselves, their expressions thoughtful. Finally, Sis Sari turned back to Lara. If we allow these creatures to remain, how can we ensure such incidents won't happen again? By fostering understanding, Lara replied. We can integrate Earth studies more deeply into the curriculum, not as an afterthought but as a cornerstone. The more we learn, the less we fear. Morvik nodded. I'll volunteer to assist. If I could overcome my fear, others can too. The council exchanged glances, their deliberation silent but intense. Finally, Sisari spoke. Very well. The council will permit Earth's creatures to remain, provided additional measures are implemented to ensure safety and education. Dr. Quinn, the responsibility is yours. Lara inclined her head. Thank you. I won't let you down. The decision was a victory, but Lara knew the real work had just begun. Over the next few weeks, she overhauled the Earth Studies program. New holographic modules showcased the intricacies of Earth's ecosystems, from the delicate dance of predator and prey to the resilience of species like the spider. Students participated in interactive simulations, learning to observe without judgment. Morvik became an unlikely ally in the effort. His first-hand experience lent credibility to Lara's teachings, and his presence drew curious students who might otherwise have dismissed the lessons. Despite his initial resistance, he threw himself into the work with surprising dedication. One afternoon, as they prepared for a demonstration, Lara found Morvik studying a hologram of the spider. His mandibles twitched thoughtfully, and his black, insectoid eyes reflected the shimmering image. Getting attached? Lara teased, setting down her notes. He glanced at her, his tone serious. It's strange. I once thought this creature was insignificant, even beneath me. Now I see how much it embodies the very qualities we Zorics pride ourselves on: strength, resilience, survival. Lara smiled. Funny how that works, isn't it? The things we fear or dismiss often have the most to teach us. He nodded slowly. You were right, Doctor. Understanding makes all the difference. The turning point came during a campus-wide event showcasing the Academy's biodiversity studies. Lara and Morvik presented a live demonstration with the spider, this time in a controlled, secure setting. The audience was skeptical at first, their murmurs filling the hall as Lara introduced the creature. This spider, she began, is more than a symbol of Earth's ecosystem. It's a reminder that strength isn't about overwhelming power, it's about balance, adaptability, and respect for the environment. Morvik stepped forward, his imposing frame drawing the audience's attention. I underestimated it. I feared it because I didn't understand it. But I've learned that fear is often just ignorance in disguise. He gestured toward the spider, now displayed on a holographic projection. This creature taught me something my greatest battles never did: humility. And I believe it can teach all of us. The hall fell silent as the audience absorbed his words. Then, slowly, applause began to ripple through the crowd. It grew louder, a wave of approval that swept over the stage. After the event, students approached Lara and Morvik with questions, their curiosity replacing their earlier apprehension. The spider, once a symbol of fear, had become a bridge between worlds. Late that evening, Lara returned to her quarters, exhaustion mingling with satisfaction. As she settled into her chair, her communicator buzzed. She answered, surprised to see Morvik's image on the screen. I wanted to thank you, he said, his tone uncharacteristically sincere. Not just for the lessons, but for challenging me. Lara smiled. You did most of the work, Morvik. I just gave you the opportunity. He hesitated before adding, I think Earth has more to offer than any of us realized. And I think you're the right person to show us. Her smile widened. Careful, Morvik. Keep talking like that, and I might think you're starting to respect me. A low, rumbling chuckle came through the communicator. Don't push your luck, Doctor. As the call ended, Lara leaned back, her thoughts drifting to the spider. It had done more than survive the breach. It had sparked a transformation in perceptions, a shift that rippled far beyond the walls of the Academy. Earth's place in the galaxy was no longer just about its dangers, it was about its lessons. And in the smallest, most unassuming corners of its ecosystems lay the greatest truths.